All right, welcome to the first ever Sae Bae cast compilation. In this one, I go over 5 different JMod conversations that were had in 2021. We talk about sailing, we talk about Raids 3 before it had even dropped, combat achievements as well before it had dropped, bots, Infernal Cape buying, Revenants, Wilderness, and DMM, and a lot more, honestly, with some stories from Mod Zuko of her first getting into RuneScape. It's a good one, and I want to get your guys' feedback. So let me hear down in the comments what your guys' thoughts are on these compilations. I've even thought of making different compilation styles, such as compilations from skillers over the course of all 5 years, or even maybe funniest moments or things like that. So just let me know. And this is obviously a test run, so if you guys aren't really into this, just let me know as well. But enjoy, and catch you in the next one. Peace. Has the sailing skill ever been seriously discussed at Jagex? Feels like if we were to get a new skill, it would fit OSRs the best and have the highest chance of passing a poll. Speaking of that, like, do you guys see in the future, in the next, let's say 2 years, re-polling a new skill?
I think that before we did any sort of polling of a skill, I'd love to see the question first asked and polled. Do you guys want to see a skill? Period.
Yeah.
Ever. In any form. Even if you could design it yourself from the ground up. You know, you got to decide it all yourself. Because that's an important question to ask. Because when it comes to a new skill, you're never going to, even if, say 80% of people wanted a new skill, right? Can you get what is now, whatever that is, 75 over 80? I'm just going to put a calculator on because I'm not going to do that. Can you get 93%, well, 93.75% of those people who said yes to agree behind one skill? Yeah. Probably not, right? So you're probably looking at closer to, you could only ever get a new skill in the game if around about 85 to 90% said yes to a skill, period.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. And you're always going to get people who say no. And that could be for a variety of reasons. There could be people who are genuinely maxed and say, I don't want to do another skill and remax. And that's the sort of like, it's the same reasons about completionist capes and that sort of stuff, Yeah. You could get people who just think the old school is what it is with the 23 skills, Like, that is the old school that I know and I love and I remember, and I never want to see anything added. Regards to sailing, it has been discussed. I've certainly been in discussions with people, like, on ideation teams, like, hey, like, do you think sailing would work? Is there anything we could do with it? So, has it been discussed? Yes. Probably by many people and lots of, subsections of the team at various points. I don't actually know the ins and outs of the sailing skill, if I'm being honest. Back when that was announced, as I kind of mentioned, I didn't really play until Iron Man came out, and I think that was pitched either around then or before then, and I never actually really caught up with it myself. I definitely didn't.
Yeah, I think it was pretty bare-boned, like, initially.
Yeah, and the annoying part with the skill, I guess this is kind of true for any design, but a skill being contentious, obviously this is a bigger factor. And it's never a bad thing because it just forces us to be good at our job. But the first pitch has to sell it, and you can't rely on revision 2 and 3. I think wording version 3 was actually in an amazing place, and I think it would have been a really good thing for the game.
But people already decided.
Yep, people already went, I don't want these battle wards. I'm like, wait, we got rid of that version 2, right? Let alone where version 3 ended up.
It's very hard to just get everyone on the same page again, and it, like, after the 3rd revision, like you just said.
Yeah, and all it takes is one content creator to make a video that people watch and go, yeah, I'm not too sure of this, but we'll see where Jagex go with it. And then that person never ever catches up with us, right? And they just see the poll and go, oh yeah, I remember there was a content creator or something that said they weren't too fond. I'm just gonna vote no. Do you know what I mean? And I think I spoke to people about this all the time, and you only realize it when you read, like, all the Q&A questions. There is a surprisingly small amount of people that actually read our blogs, let alone vote in our polls. I mean, you think how many players are in the game, and polls get what, like 40k votes to like 70k votes? We have hundreds of thousands of players.
Yeah.
Right? It kind of shows, right? Like how few people actually keep up to date with our stuff. So the people who do, you really need to make an effort to make sure that they know everything, right? And that you've done the best to explain everything to those people. And I do think that the way that, you know, the way that Warding 3 was done was a good way to do it. The initial design could have had a lot more team input, and once we saw the reception to the first input, there were a lot more specific sessions with more people, and like the feedback sessions were done properly. So that was a learning process for us in processes. I don't want to go too much into the details, but you know, I felt like there was a lot more team input that went into this stuff, with a lot more people who had like really understood skilling. We even got people in from the RuneScape 3 team who made great points even if they don't know our game, because they've made skills and they've run into these problems. We had people obviously talking about who knew like the PVM and could give critical information about battle wards and how they would work and how they wouldn't work and why they might not be good for the game and that sort of stuff, right? All of that in from the start. And you really do need those perspectives for something like a skill that touches so much of the game.
Yep.
Like you could introduce Raids 3, you could do it however you want, and there's going to be a bunch of people who will never touch Raids 3 because it's not their content.
Yep.
Whether they're a skiller, whether they're just low mid level, and those people don't care what Raids 3 ends up doing, but the high level people do. So you got to get those on board. But a skill, nobody can really ignore it, right?
Yep.
I mean, just go look at the turnout for that poll. It was huge. Whether those people all knew all the information about Blog 3 or not is a separate issue and separate thought, but it doesn't really matter because, you know, it's our job to communicate that information to the players. It's not the players' job to keep up to date with everything we do, you know?
What would you want for a new skill, like personally? Is there, or do you even want a new skill? Because I personally, I think I would like a new skill, and I think BC Guppy got me really into the idea of sailing and all the potential it could bring. There's so much. That would be the most overwhelming just project to work on, I can imagine, getting all the balances right. But
it depends whether you're asking me as a player, as a dev. It gets really complicated. I can still answer from all perspectives. As a player, I'd really love a new skill just generally because it's more content, right? There are a lot of people out there, you know, saying, oh, where's Raids 3? And, you know, I already said I get burned out from the game anyway. You know, I went hard for both leagues and all this. To me, I that would just be another thing for me to do and another goal for me to make and another journey for me to enjoy along the way. So for that reason, I'd love a new skill. As a developer, I think working on a new skill would be really fun, provided that you got it, like, you if it passed the poll.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be a lot of fun to work on it. I think that obviously if you work really hard on a skill and it doesn't pass, that could be quite, not demotivating, but like, you never like to see your hard work get then, you know, scrapped or, you know, put to the side. So as a developer, like, I'm like, yeah, maybe not. It depends. I think it would definitely be fun to do. And then I think even just from a business side of it, I think that a new skill would do a lot for the game.
Yeah, for sure.
It would be a piece of content that, like I said, because it hits so many players, there would be a lot of people who would potentially come back to try it out because wouldn't.
And there would be so many. I could just imagine all the max players that have burnt out come back to like reclaim their maxscape almost. Like, you're gonna get so much. Yeah.
And all it takes is giving people a reason to come back, and then they go, oh wow. Since I left, you guys have got Raids 3, and you've got, you know, Temperos, and you've got combat achievements, and you've got oh my god, there's more quests, and, you know, suddenly, like, you've got that person, you know what I mean, right?
Yep.
So I think that for terms of a game, it would be really good. And I just think, like, you can't really ignore looking at it, even from someone who's aware of RuneScape but not playing it. Like, oh, old school RuneScape finally releases its first new skill after, you know, 8 or 9 years or whatever it ends up being. That gets people's attention.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, from almost all aspects, I would like to see it. But as for what I want to see, I don't know. If I'm being honest, I quite liked warding, but I agree that a production skill that you just becomes buyable isn't good. Almost any mini game I think of could be turned into a skill, right? Kind of like Dungeoneering does. But then, what's the difference between a mini game and a skill?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, what if Hallowed Sepulchre gave like 100 or 1,000 times as many hallowed marks, and each hallowed mark was redeemed for 1 XP, and we've got the, you know, agility 2 skill. You can kind of it's just a reward system, and the reward system ends up being XP instead of a physical object or something the player chases. I mean, what's the difference, you know?
I've been fully convinced that sailing is the best. And the coolest part was us kind of like talking about how sailing could be like how there could be a perfectly designed balanced PvP that involves you shooting another person's boat basically. And I think it would be cool to just from scratch make an entire new PvP scene and you guys can balance it to the T. Like you don't have to deal with past metas or anything. It's just like you got your you set up your 4 dwarf cannons on the side of your boat. You can balance it and you can, you can have your player there as well. You can hire like little minions to help you out and stuff. I think it's just such a cool idea. It would be the most intense project of all time, I can imagine. But there's so much to it. It's the BC Guppy cast, I think it was part 1. We just talked about it. We went on about it for like 45 minutes about all these ideas. It was just, that's what I would want. I don't think anything can top it now in my eyes.
So in this sense, does PvP stand for pirate versus pirate then, or?
yeah, exactly.
So combat achievements is, with the difficulty of them, the biggest thing was like looking at the bosses themselves. And I think the initial design had it as, let's take Vorkath, and Vorkath is an elite tier boss, and all the tasks should be elite. And that's not the way we ended up going with it. We've got a range of tasks now where Vorkath might have a Grandmaster task and a couple of masters and a few elites and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
But the biggest thing we ended up realizing when we came to the system was some of these bosses that reasonably you want to have on the system are going to have requirements that might not be friendly to all accounts. So Pures are a great example. Can they fight Vorkath? No, because Dragon Slayer 2 requires quests that give defense XP, right?
Yep.
And it's not a case of saying, oh, well, we have to make sure Pures can get complete Grandmaster, and so there's no Vorkath task. No, we're not going to do that. But what we can do is say, we ask ourselves the question, what difficulty level are we okay with saying Pures can complete, right? And the answer we came up with was hard. So we're okay with Pures getting to hard, and elite is that level where we stop caring about your requirements, if that makes sense.
We don't care about your opinions anymore, Pures. Once we get to it, yeah. No, and I think I thought that was a great idea. You gave him a little bit, where you didn't really necessarily need to in the first place, but that was very kind of you.
Yeah, and what that means is, unfortunately, there isn't going to be some really difficult thing for Pures. Like, obviously, we can't have like a 1 defense Inferno task in the hard tier for Pures, right? Or something like that. We can't have a 1 defense Inferno period unless we do some clever hackery, like override your defense and stuff like that, right? Because nobody can complete this tier because you all leveled your defense to 2. But yeah, that's the general gist. So elite is that weird tier where you might see like a Thermi task, and you're like, well, Thermi isn't hard, but Thermi or Vorkath might just there might be those like. Oh, what am I trying to say? Those tasks that just have requirements. I'm trying to remember now because I'm now worried if I've said Thermi, but then Thermi actually doesn't have any requirements. I can't remember.
I'm not sure.
In terms of
but yeah, I know what you mean.
Like defense.
Yeah.
But yeah, you might have a few bosses at like elite tier where you're thinking this isn't actually an elite task in terms of difficulty in the grand scale. Like if you lined up all the tasks and took an even cross section or something. But I don't think that matters too much because really the way the diary should be looked at isn't this task is too easy to be an elite task. What you do is you look at it and say, oh, we want this entire culmination of tasks at this tier represents elite, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see
so
that.
there might be a few that are a bit easy and there might be a few that are a bit harder, but ultimately that entire tier is there. So in terms of task difficulty, I'm not sure if you saw, but we went over and revealed the Theater of Blood tasks.
All of them?
Yeah,
I missed
we
it.
We had a sneak peek live stream, and what we did was we actually tried it was part of the Steam launch where we showed off combat achievements, the progress, the interfaces, that sort of stuff. And the only tasks we revealed were Theater of Blood, and I think that gives a general good idea of what we're going with. So elite is that we've got we expect most people who would consider themselves a PVMer to be able to do elite. And that's a really hard group of people. But you're imagining the person who's not scared of like Chambers of Zarek, right? And maybe dabbled in Theater of Blood and that sort of thing. And Master is the anything from there up until like completion of an Inferno, right? Is where we go with that. Because Grandmaster is specifically, we want these tasks to be generally seen as, if you can't beat the Inferno, you can't complete the Grandmaster tier. Because let's just say Grandmaster was, you beat the Inferno, you can't, you can do Grandmaster. There are a lot of things more difficult than the Inferno in our game, right? I think 6 Jads is probably a good example of that, if I'm being honest. I think the 6 Jad challenge might be harder than the Inferno in terms of like the mechanical difficulty of that versus Zuck, perhaps. Yeah. It might just be more mechanically difficult, and Zuck has a lot more decision-making stuff.
And it's a lot longer. There's so much room to be punished, basically, on any mistake in the Inferno.
Yeah. But the real question is, should there be a difficulty limit for Grandmaster? And, I mean, this might be spoilering and stuff, but there isn't going to be a task for, say, do the no pillar Inferno, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that just feels a bit ridiculous to ask a number of players to do. And as far as difficulty, the biggest one that is quite contentious is speed tasks, right?
Yep.
Unless we make it faster than the world record, you're always going to have somebody who says, this is too easy because I've already done it, right?
Yep. No, that's exactly how I felt. And like people were like, oh, this better be harder than the Oblivion Diary. It's like, I mean, you already have your arbitrary diaries. I mean, this is like in the game. This is supposed to be a fun thing, not just like ruin my life over completing all these like impossible tasks. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, because I don't know where we sit at that, but like I think the Oblivion Diary is a 55-minute Inferno, or is it 60 or something like that? I can't remember.
I
it's
think
ballpark
it's 55.
there.
I want to say because I was saying I think my suggestion was I think it should be like sub 65 or sub 60 for Grandmaster, but you don't need the league.
So all of these numbers depend on where combat achievement settles for one, right? So that's a thing to consider. But in today's game, the discussion always goes, should it be 65 or 70? And we don't know where we'll sit on that. I think right now it's coded in at 65, but that could very much that we didn't need to care because we know combat achievements is happening, right? So there's no point putting the actual number on there. But I think that's roughly where we were talking. And I remember speaking to Atticon about this, and even he thought that was fair. And Atticon is phenomenal at the Inferno, right? It's just that level of difficulty where you say to people, hey, you need to be pretty good at this. You're also going to probably need to have some pretty good gear, right? And I don't know if a sub 65 Inferno absolutely requires a twisted bow or not. But I think there is a point of, and I had this problem with the with Trailblazer League. If you remember, there was a task for sub 75 Inferno on there, and I'm not sure if you were following it that much, but that was ridiculously easy for Rangers who like world records were closer to 40 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But Meleeers, you had the problem of
Zook was so slow, right?
Yeah. So Meleeers 75 was actually a pretty reasonable challenge, and Majors was obviously a bit easier than Melee, but not as easy as Range.
Yeah.
And you run into that problem when doing all these time tasks of what if we said that, okay, we need to balance this around people not having a twisted bow, right? You run into the problem of, but if you have a twisted bow, it's just a free game, right?
Yeah, that's tough.
So it's a really fine line to get, and I think at the end of the day, even if 65 minutes is what we go with, and say there's no changes to equipment rebalancing theoretically, right? And they absolutely required a twisted bow to complete, and I can already hear there are going to be Iron Men specifically are like, wow, you're saying that I can't do the Grandmaster tier until I get a ridiculous drop from raids, and I could just go super dry at and never get.
Yeah.
Because that is a fair criticism. But I think it's more about aspirational content. There is still a world where new items could come out in the future that allow you to accomplish that time. Now, there might also be new Grandmaster tasks that come out with said content, but I think that's just that. I think that's a good way to look at it, right? It's that aspirational content, and it is something to aim for. If anyone has been burnt out and thinking, I'm never going to get a twisted bow and can't be bothered, now they've got a real reason to.
Yep.
But I don't think we ever want to go that level with Master. And I mean, just looking at some of the tasks, speed tasks are only one factor of combat achievements. They really are. They're not even the most important factor to me, because if this was just kill the boss X number of times and kill it at this speed, that's not interesting. I'd just rather not do the update at that point. To me, combat achievements is about the super exciting tasks that get you thinking about the game in a different way, or make you do a boss in a way that like you haven't done before. And I'm not saying that nobody has done before. It might just be experiencing the efficient way to do the boss, but in a smaller scale. So if you could, and I think that makes combat achievements hit a larger group of people than maybe people realize, because people are going to say, we don't want combat achievements, we want raids 3. I've already done God Wars, I don't care about God Wars. But have you tried to like, you know, I'm trying to think of a good example. Have you ever considered doing Zilly like with like perfect flicks or like Bandos, or have you considered, you know, the various ways and efficient ways to do like chin tasks for Kree, you know? And there are people who, like, I'm going to steal Mod Arcane's term here, but he calls them Tob Andes, right? There are people who get into PVM, they do Chambers of Zarek, or maybe they jump into Tob, and that's all they do.
Yep.
That's all they need to do to make money, right? They're great at Tob, but have they really truly experienced every part of the game?
Yeah, you definitely see how when they get, I just think of like Fudge Shover when he first went to Chambers. He was a master at TOB, and then he steps into Chambers. It's just like a train wreck at first, and that's what everybody has because they get comfortable with like a certain piece of content. Same thing with me with Inferno. You might think, oh, like I'm good at Nightmare, which is inherently not even really that tough, but it's like I'm not good at the Inferno because I just don't spend enough time there. So yeah, diversifying yourself with a bunch of different content is definitely going to make you just a better player overall.
So yeah, and I really think that the amount of people who can truly say I've already mastered all the content is so low that I think combat achievements will have something for everyone. Yeah. It's also part of the reason for it was it's a good guide for new players. I know people, oh my god, we don't care about new players because we're people who just want raids 3. But it really is like the amount of times I've gone onto a stream and you hear the streamer be asked, "Hey, I'm like 70 to 80 combat level, and I have these stats. What boss should I fight?" Right? And there's no indication in game of where to go with that because all the bosses have arbitrary combat levels, and the best answer that can now be given is, well, start with the combat achievements. Work your way through easy, medium, and hard, and when you hit a sticking point, maybe at that point you're like, I should go level my stats, right? Or maybe the diary makes you, as we said, go do Dragon Slayer 2 because there's a task for Vorkath, and that sets a new goal for those people. Yeah, I think there's a lot more to it that really helps.
I'm really excited about it, especially because it isn't like essential to do it. Like you don't need to do this because there's not like Infernal Cape 3 coming out or like 2. You know, like Infernal Cape 2 is coming out where you can't even play the game until you've completed the Grandmaster. I feel like all the perks are very nice, but they're not like essential to an account, which I think is like really good the way you guys have it.
Exactly. They're cosmetics, they're slight increases to efficiency in some places. You know, if there are any clue hunters out there, you know, maybe they want to get maybe they want to get the things that boost the clue rates. Right?
I got to give a big shout out to that. That is amazing. That is an amazing perk. I'm surprised that even was like part of it at all.
You need to thank Arcane for that because he rewrote how a lot of clue scrolls are handed out and centralized a lot to make that implementation much nicer. So
that is the one like saving grace to like not having a mace by now is like at least I'm being macro efficient by not starting Seracnus until that 1 in 57 instead of 1 in 60 for an elite clue comes out. It's like the one thing is like, okay, like, you know, being a little bit macro efficient here.
Oh, for sure.
If we did release Raids 3 tomorrow, the majority of the people that are really complaining about, like, I really need Raids 3, and I'm just so bored, probably would burn out of it in months. Like, even if it had as much depth as Chambers, like, how like advanced the community is now of figuring out almost optimal methods and everything, like, they just go through it so fast. I'm not using that as like an excuse to say that's not why we're doing Raids or anything. It's not the reason at all. I'm just saying, like, I think there's definitely a group of players that are going to burn through whatever we give them no matter what.
Oh,
they're just going to get through it so fast, especially like the non-Iron Man accounts where it's just about GP. Like, we've got people with 10 build GP on their account, right? Raid 3 comes out, they're probably just going to be able to buy all the uniques like day one. And then it's like, what does it really have for them? So then is it just like speedrunning? Is it KC? Is it pets? Is it just figuring out the content? So obviously the first 100, 200 KC is going to be engaging regardless, right? But as soon as you get to the point where you feel like you master the content, it generally gets boring no matter what it is. And that's where the depth really matters, right? Like, people felt like they mastered Nightmare in like a week, a day.
Yeah.
Just because the depth just wasn't really there. Kind of same with Gauntlet. And that's where raids really scratch that really good long-lasting itch. But that long-lasting itch is very subjective, right?
Yeah.
Like some people will enjoy a raid for ages, while some people only enjoy it for 50, 100 KC. And I hope I kind of answers some things. It's kind of just a ramble of thoughts on the matter. And I want endgame stuff. I'm biased. I'm an endgame player, of course. But I don't think saying don't give the lower level people anything like they don't need it or anything like that. Like this isn't going to hit the itch for those players. But we kind of need to give everyone content, and I think we've maybe shifted a step too far, you know, where it's like we've neglected early game players for such a long time now, and maybe we've just gone too far and we've just given them way too much, and like in 1 year, effectively, we've just given them so much to sink their teeth into. Like maybe we have just gone that one step too far, where one or two of them updates should have been catered to the high end. We haven't got the balance right. Clearly, people are upset, right? They're voicing their frustrations, and that kind of proves that we haven't got the balance right. And it's still something that internally people are working on, right? Like, how do we balance all this content and make everyone happy simultaneously?
Yeah,
it's like so hard, especially with things like Steam on our shoulders, right?
Well,
these like massive initiatives.
I don't think I agree with everybody on Twitter that just yells every day, wins raids 3, wins the, like, you know, just constantly want it, because it's not like it's just recent. This has been happening since before Nightmare even came out. Like, just begging.
There has been complaints for a while.
Yeah. And so, and like we have had the Gauntlet, which, you know, and like you said, it doesn't have like the same depth as Chambers or TOB. But there still is so much, you know, like there is Gauntlet, there is Nightmare. Nightmare we can talk about in a separate topic, but like, I don't know. I personally don't agree.
This is the Iron Man perspective, though, right? To an Iron Man, there's so much to do. Like I've sunk like 5,000-6,000 hours, whatever, and there's still so much more content to do. And I've been extremely lucky on my account. I've probably saved thousands of hours just in like a pure RNG. But there's still so much content to do. But I think you do hit this like critical point where it's like say Nightmare is your only grind left on your account, you kind of lose that motivation because you're like, why am I grinding Nightmare? Like, where's my motivation coming from? What's pushing me? Because it's like, say I do go really hard and I get all these drops, then what? You're just going to quit. You don't even get to use all these items that you've grinded, right? Yep. You just stop. You've always got to have that grind after the current grind to like look forward to that you can use all your like fancy items on. But then from a main perspective, like what's the point in doing anything that's not top, right? Like you just make an absolute dick ton of money, and unless you care about pets, like what else is there to do? And that's kind of where like this is just going to obviously divert into me like sort of what's the word? Trying to show off my own content or whatever. So obviously I've been working on combat achievements for quite a while now, and this is where I kind of hope combat achievements is going to alleviate some of these issues, because I know it's not the same. It's not got the same the depth. It's not new content, etc., etc. But for some players, not all players, but for some players that only do like say Tob or Vorkath, like the efficient content, because they feel like they've got no reason to do any other content. They don't care about the pets. They just care about money, and they want to get the stats up and just get all the gear, right? That's all the most mains care about, at least from my perspective, and the majority. But obviously, there's no reason to do anything that's not the best GP per hour, whether that's with a team or solo play. But combat achievements is obviously going to give you a reason to do this other content. And what I'm hoping is by all these players experiencing such a wide berth of content, because RuneScape has so much to offer that these players are just effectively not touching at all, that maybe they actually just discover that they enjoy other pieces of content. Or they're like, maybe they actually do really like solo Kriara. They find it really satisfying. Maybe they enjoy this. Maybe they stop caring about the GP per hour and they actually look at all this different content and enjoy these different mechanics and engagement and like diversity. Like hopefully they can just enjoy the game more because of that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I'm aspiring to something that will never happen. But that's what I'd like to think, because personally, that's kind of what Iron Man did to me. Where it's like I only did Inferno, Tob, and like solo Cox on my main, pretty much, and like some Slayer bosses like Grotesque Guardians. That's all I did. And that's so boring because you just get bored doing the same thing day in, day out. No one enjoys doing the same thing day in, day out, like constantly. You need to have some variety, either in drops or content itself. And I'm hoping Combat Achievements kind of pushes that into mains a bit, since Iron Man's kind of just get that for free because you have reasons to go to every piece of content pretty much.
Yeah. No, I honestly think Combat Achievements is going to be one of the greatest updates, because It has unlimited potential. Any other boss that comes out, it can be added. At least I think that's what's happening, right? Like new things come out, and then whether there be a grace period or not, like it'll eventually be added. So personally, I think it's great because it's not forced upon anyone to do it. There's nothing too OP that's like you have to do this now. But like it gives you nice perks.
Reason to do it.
Yeah.
Because so people don't feel bad about doing stuff that's subpar GP per hour because they actually can go like, well, I actually kind of want to do these tasks. And hopefully that's enough of a motivator.
Yeah, and honestly, making an Iron Man was the greatest thing ever because there was so many pieces of content that I would never, ever would have done. And I see mains all the time, just they're Inferno, Chambers, and TOB Andes, and like that's all they do. And so when there are very tough tasks, like, I don't know, I'm going to assume there's maybe a solo Bandos task that has something to do with flicking. Honestly, there are probably so many. Okay, listen, a cold one. By the way, he's the GOAT because he completed a solo TOB first try on a hardcore. That's insane.
So amazing.
It's incredible. Honestly, it's like it's up there with Exact's 40 combat. Just crazy.
It really is.
Yeah.
The stress of that man went under. Oh my god.
I was like squenching up so hard, man. I couldn't breathe. Like, you know when you're in a car and like some crazy driver's in the driver's seat and you're just like pressing your legs against the car because you feel like you're gonna crash.
He's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's bad. I brought up him because he literally had mentioned he has never learned to flick Bandos. He's never needed to. He just maged it when he was on his Iron Man, and now like, you know, he's on a main or something. He doesn't need to worry about that.
But that's the thing, right? Like a main, the amount of mains that do solo bandos is probably so small.
Oh,
and solo bandos is actually really fun. Like melee solo bandos is so exciting and like fairly exhilarating. Like stuff that's like those tick perfect flicks is just so satisfying. That's why like solo Olm is like my favorite content in the game. Like that's like doing like Forza 0 and Forza 1 is just so satisfying.
So
and like
fun.
Bandos gives you that on a much lower level. It just gives you that feeling of power, right? Even in the Inferno, when you're like flicking like 3 or 4 monsters at the same time, you just get that feeling of empowerment. This is just addicting. And there's so many players that would just never experience that because they have no reason to do the content, right? And hopefully these tasks, again, really give people to experience this content and maybe they find that addiction and then they really enjoy that and they're like, this is great. I want to do this more.
What are your thoughts personally on Nightmare drop rates? And especially, I don't know, because I'm assuming you knew that they were they were way worse when they were first released.
Unreleased, yeah.
So who's deciding these drop rates? And do you think Nightmare specifically was made this way just to kind of appease people for a long period of time?
So in answer to your last question, definitely not. That wasn't the intent where it's just kind of like, oh, we need this content just to last because we don't have anything scheduled. That wasn't the case. Like, I've talked to a lot of the devs that worked on that project, and it just kind of seemed that there's a lot of conflicting goals of the project where it's kind of like it should like cater to these people, but then we don't want it to like introduce too many items into the game too fast because then they'll get like if I run you through some hypotheticals of what the drop table could look like, you can kind of see like the design problems that it has. Like if you compare it to Corp, obviously, like you could have just had a Corp style drop table. It could have scaled up like Corp, where the more people you are, the faster it dies. But then, like, you wanted to have a standard loot as well, right? So it's like, well, you want everyone to have a chance at the unique, because otherwise, it's the lower level players are just never going to have a chance at the unique, right? Like, you go to Corp with like 70 strength and 70 attack or whatever, 75 attack for the spear or whatever it is. You're probably just never going to have a chance at anything, right? You're going to get 0 drops, 0 KC, and it's kind of just lame. It's not really encouraging it as a group boss. So then, obviously, the idea comes in, everyone gets the KC. It's obviously similar to like Zulcana or whatever, but it's just not many people cares about the drop rates of Zulcana at this point. But then you want to give everyone loot as well, because you don't want people to kill the boss and get nothing. But then we can't give everyone good loot, because if we gave everyone like 5 prayer pots every kill, obviously that's just so many prayer pots that can come into the game in an 80-man, right? Like, there's just so many.
Yep.
You can't really do that, so then the drop rates should be like scaled down, and it's like, okay, well, we want everyone to feel like they have a chance of the unique, but then how did we actually do that? Like, if Nightmare didn't scale at all, or maybe the drop rates did scale, with how many people were in it, like, I think mathematically or something, you would have to have the boss drop a unique every 5 kills or something in an 80-man for it to be like the same drop rate as doing solo. Which, if you just think about that, that's crazy. How many uniques are coming into the game then? Like, if you get potentially a Nightmare Mace every 50 kills or something like that, an Inquisitor's Mace every 50 kills, like there's so many maces coming into the game, then the market would just crash. Like, it'd just be worth nothing.
So so I have a counter argument. So let's say, you'll bring up the point of 5 prayer pots for, let's just say there was an 80 man and let's just say the 80 man takes 3 minutes or something. I don't even know how long those take, honestly. Never done one. But
yeah, I get it.
I mean, wouldn't it be fair if everyone got, 4 or 5 prayer pot? Like, is it like actually like, because I'm just thinking 80 people are participating in this content, whereas, if there was only one person, those 79 other people would be doing Vorkath or something else. Like, and then they're getting way more supplies somewhere else. So like, was that really like, I don't know how
I'm not saying these are like the direct considerations. I'm just trying to say like all these directions the drop table could have gone in. I'm not saying that the drop table right now is perfect at all. I don't think that at all. I think there's loads of changes that could have been made to it in a lot of different directions. But I'm just saying, like, if everyone did get 5 prayer pots in 80-man, that's a lot of prayer pots coming into the game. And if you think about worst case scenario where like every world is full of like 80-man people doing that, like that's the meta, right? 80-man people, like that's potentially so many supplies that are coming into the game. And yeah, you're right in the sense that, okay, it's taking it away from other content. That's where it just becomes really unpredictable. So maybe this was just like a really safe route, whereas like, okay, it might feel a bit underwhelming. But then I think there's just so many things with Nightmare, because then you got like the whole run distance. Like maybe that was just taken too far. Like, is the run through the caverns long enough to dissuade people using POH metas? Like, imagine if you could teleport right outside the stairs before you go down into the dungeon or whatever. Like, is that run long enough to still be long enough to not care about teleporting to house every kill? I think so, to be honest. I think if you only had to make that run as opposed to going from the boat or top bank to those stairs and then obviously going to Nightmare from there, like, is it just too much? Like, and then obviously you have the drop rates and you have the kills per hour, then you have the scaling. There's just so many factors that I think it tried to hit, and by trying to hit every single one simultaneously, it kind of just flopped a bit.
I want to talk about the Zuko before becoming a JMod, and even honestly, I guess
You're going into my childhood here.
Okay, maybe not that far, but like let's talk about your first experience with RuneScape.
It's a mild autumn day in shit. Damn it, I've already lost it. All right, anyway, it was like autumn 2004, and I was just on my way to moving into secondary school. Or like, I guess you'd call it like,
Middle
what do you
school.
call it? Like,
I call it middle school.
in the
Some people
US,
call it
yeah.
junior high. We call it
And
middle.
like, there was this boy that was part of my class, and he, my previous class when I was at the other school, and he came over to my house, and he told me there is this brilliant game that you have to play. However, there is a lot of fighting over resources, so unfortunately, there are too many people in the game. I can't let you know the name of the game because, yeah, you'll just come and ruin it for me.
Oh god.
So he made me close my eyes, and then he typed it into my browser, and he was like, okay, you can look now. And I just looked at the browser, and it said runescape.com, and he was like, you weren't supposed to look. I'm like, yeah, well. It's like, oh, well, can't be the end of the world, really. And so my first character was a dude with a big long white beard and white hair. He kind of looked, actually, I think he was basically like a recolored Swampletics, my first character. And I loved him.
Okay. What was his name?
Oh, I'm not going to give you the name from that back then. I was a stupid kid, and I'm
Okay.
terrified to share those kind of
Okay, that's
things.
fine.
Because here's the thing, right? If you know the names from my past, you put them into Google, and then you see the kind of crap that I wrote on forums when I was 12 years old, and I'm not having that.
That's fair.
It's just not. It's not good for me.
That's understandable. What happened after that? Did you get instantly hooked, or what? Did you just play it for a little bit?
Yeah, I think I might have been instantly hooked, to be honest. Like, I kind of remember waking up at like 4:30 a.m. sometimes, just like, my brain just decided that I shouldn't have more than a few hours of sleep, and then I was just so happy. I was like, oh my God, I get to wake up at 4:30. That's like 4 hours before my parents wake up. I can play RuneScape for 4 hours without them giving me BS. This is fantastic. So yeah, I was hooked, and I loved thieving. I would regularly just ditch out on my friends to do thieving.
Oh, so you were a member way back then.
Actually, that was when I was 12, so it probably took me about a year to convince my mum to get me membership.
Okay.
And I have no idea how I convinced her, because at the end of the day, it's like, your parents, when you're young, they want like rationalization behind what you spend.
Yeah.
But I can't offer you rationalization. I just sat her in front of the membership page and I was like, look, Mom, the gnomes, they're riding tortoises. And she's like, what the fuck are you doing? What is happening? Like,
Yeah. No, I
just
I
trying to
I
like,
I look back at convincing my dad because I had to convince my dad because I had to get like I don't even think my mom had an email in 2004 because I also started in 2004. I don't even
oh,
know. Like we
perfect,
were,
yeah.
I had to convince my dad that these people weren't gonna like steal his email and stuff. But he finally, like I'd spend a month saving up $5, and then I'd give it to him and be like, "Can you do this for me?"
Oh my God. And you saved up that's amazing that you saved up your own money for it.
Yeah, I had to clean the bathroom. Like I think I'd make like 50 cents every time I cleaned the bathroom. So it's probably like 10 times, and I
That
couldn't
is
clean it every day
unfair.
either.
Dude, that is like child labor. What the fuck? Like 50 cents for
No,
cleaning a whole bathroom?
yeah, for some reason we actually made money the younger we were, and then we stopped making money from like jobs. Like we were just forced to at that point, like mowing the lawn and stuff. We just were forced to. Because
Oh, dearie,
yeah.
dearie.
Anyway, but continuing, did you ever quit before Old School came out, or did you play up until then?
Yeah, I'm afraid I did. I think the first time that Jagex lost me was 2009. I played it all the way up till 2009, and there was just something wrong with my brain back then in that I couldn't keep up with the game. So it might sound silly because most people were worried about like wilderness and free trade back then, and I just had my head in the clouds. I was just like, damn, I can't believe they added summoning. Now I have to like pick stuff up off the floor. It's ugh, I hate this. And like, yeah, the game just changed quite a bit. And eventually I was like, right, well, I'm 16 years old. I'm a real adult now. I can't play these childish video games anymore. I quit. And then I came back like probably like 2 weeks later for all I know.
2 weeks later. Jesus Christ.
Oh, here's gonna be a little bombshell for you actually. I was a naughty child. Well, actually, I was a naughty adult, to be honest. In 2012, I would play a private server, and it was like I forget the exact year it was, but it was like a clone of the old game, and I loved that because it was just like everything I remembered without the stuff that confused me and stuff that felt like excess, if that made sense.
Okay.
And then around that time, I heard rumblings that Jagex may indeed be starting up their own old version of the game sometime soon. And that ended up being Old School RuneScape. And so I was there on the release day to play Old School RuneScape, and I was so happy because I could finally fish in Catherby with a billion other people again.
Wow.
And then a big fish stole my fucking harpoon, and I was angry.
I want to get a little bit more into day one of Old School because I never got that experience, and I've talked to a few other guests on the Sae Bae cast of their experiences with it. But what was the feeling like of starting over? Everybody's level 3, and it's the game you grew up loving.
So I was a skiller growing up, slash role player slash talker. Like I played the game to socialize more than anything in
Mm-hmm.
my own little medieval world. So when the game actually released again, I knew a little bit more. The experience, it wasn't the same. It wasn't that same, like, I'm going to stand on the spot and just interact with some guy in the middle of like Falador, and then he's gonna become my best friend for a while, and then he's gonna take like 5k off me, and I'll cry for a week. Like that experience was gone. Now I was in Cafe Bay fishing because I wanted my fishing level to go up because I was older and things had changed. But the first day experience was like such a mad rush. It was ridiculous. It was like hard to kind of get onto a world. It was hard to get out of the door on Tutorial Island, for fuck's sake. I think later I found out that like there was another way through the door. Like I don't remember exactly. I think they did something to either skip part of Tutorial Island or move like keep the door open or something. When I was younger, I really struggled to understand how to play the game. Like,
We all did.
well, no,
Trust me.
seriously,
I
like
didn't know anything.
you say that, but I remember like people knew what they were doing back then, right?
Yeah,
Like
but
some people knew.
those were like back in 2005, 2006, like those were like the 16, 17-year-olds that all knew what they were doing. I was like
Really?
11. And so I had no idea what was going on. Like my brain wasn't developed.
Like, yeah, I mean, like I got like level 60 thieving, and I was like, I need to make money. I'm going to kill chickens, you know? Like that was how my brain worked. I
Yeah.
had no idea what was going on. I was big into thieving. You know that boy that I told you about, the one that introduced me to the game?
Yeah.
Um, I leveled his account. Yeah, I know, right? I got into his account, and
Report it.
yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's okay. I'll just deny and report myself. No, wait, never mind. But like, yeah, that I leveled his account all the way to level 40 thieving in one weekend. And then he bragged to me about I how he was like the master thief, and I got so mad at him. I was just like, that was my work, and he's like, yeah, well, my account, bitch. And I'm like, oh my God, I hate you. It
Savage.
was horrible. So I'm calling him out now that I'm famous in the RuneScape world. God damn you, bro. What the hell was that?
So I need to ask, does the Baroque song bring back a flood of memories? Because,
Are you asking me if Ardoin? Dude,
yeah,
Ardoin is my
yeah,
city.
yeah.
That place is. Every time I go there, it just fills me with happiness. I can barely even like. I don't know. Ardoin is it's my home city, you know.
Yeah. No,
King Lathas kind of be a bitch, but other than that, the place is wonderful.
I'd have to agree because, yeah, Ardoin walking in there, and I would go all the way from White Wolf Mountain, all the way through Sears Village, all the way south to Ardoin to the cake stall, and I'd start thieving my little cakes. And that song, when it started playing, I was like, oh my God. Because I would only get like a month or two of membership every summer. And then during the school year, I'd be back to free to play.
Oh my
And this
God.
happened for like 3 years. So like every summer, I would like save up $5 and play. And that was like, oh my God, like if I can get to Ardoin, like that's the best. And I used to call it Ardugny when I was a kid.
I think I called it Ardung, like the poop.
Oh
I don't
God.
know why.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, everyone still mispronounces things. There was just a Reddit post like last week talking about how people say I think they say corporal beast instead of corporeal. Most
Well,
people
he
just
does
call it
dish out the
corp.
punishment.
Sorry.
Well, he does dish out the punishment, you know, the corporal punishment.
Yeah, maybe that's why
There's
they
a few
get
hardcore
confused.
side to that guy.
Yeah, in terms of magic, um, I would like to see it used more. I hope it's used more in raids 3, like Tombs of a Masket. That would kind of fit the style of, a lot of people have been saying this as well. Like I've seen a lot of players kind of hoping it will be meta in Tombs of a Masket because of Chambers of Xeric being ranged heavy, TOB being melee heavy. Then this would be
True.
fitting to have be, magic heavy. Not obviously not only magic, but it would make sense. It would fit that.
Yeah.
This is not a spoiler by any means. I don't actually know what the metas will be at all. I don't think any of the boss designs are final at all either.
So we need a harm staff, is what you're saying.
Yeah, go panic buy harm staffs. Thank you.
Do you think they're gonna do anything to the? Or I guess I say they. Do you think they're gonna, like, you're literally part of the team, but what do you think about the harm staff being Probably completely devalued by the time the new wand comes out. Again, like it could fill a niche, but the harm's very expensive and very. It takes a long
It is
time to
very
get,
expensive.
and it's
And
getting
it is
worse
quite
and
rare.
worse with new gear upgrades.
It is. I would like to see it still useful. I know that it was hurt quite a lot by thralls,
Yeah, and then the
and I would hate
arcane
to see it, be lowered even more by the wand potentially like overtaking it. I'd
and the
like to see it
arcane
have.
buff as well.
Oh yeah, there's that as well. I would like to see it have more of a kind of like niche use case, perhaps, to make it relevant still. Because it just kind of feels like it should have that, being that rare.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be like a hard hitting weapon. It should have something more.
Yeah, and like I was talking to West Ham, very good PvPer, and I mean he literally just uploaded another video last night of him using the harm staff in PvP and then AGSing, and it's a deadly combo. It's like actually disgusting
Oh yeah.
how crazy that stuff can be because you just attack from long range and then run up and then both hit spots hit the same time. It's just like
It's insane.
can't out eat it, but so like
And
the harm
that's
staff
something to consider as well. Sorry.
no, that's literally
in PvP,
that's literally
like,
the thing that needs to be balanced around it because it is still extremely powerful with PvP.
and that's where we kind of hit a cap almost as to how much we can power creep stuff.
Yeah,
Because
like
if we can always like make bosses harder, but what do we do in PvP?
yeah, no, for real. And so maybe the harm is fine where it is because it's already super real. It's like really good in PvP. Who knows what they can do? I was just thinking like those new demonic spells on the Arceus spellbook don't get any love, and maybe if those could be maybe if those could be made to like 4-tick with the harm staff, it could be maybe worth it somewhere.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but like,
perhaps it would kind of take it away from the standard spellbook though, where it's like the strongest at the
exactly.
moment. So it's a matter of like I talked about this a little bit before, but I'm a big fan of things having an identity. It's something that I fought very hard for when we initially talked about the blowpipe being nerfed.
Yeah.
Because one of the original suggestions internally was let's make it 3-tick. That
Yep.
would help solve all the balancing issues.
Yep.
But that would completely change the feel of the blowpipe.
Absolutely.
That would change how you move with it, how you move, attack, etc. I feel like it being 2-tick is its identity.
That is true.
So I'm very keen on like keeping that, and that's why like when we were discussing it, I would rather see it like nerfed really strongly rather than being slower, because being slower would feel so incredibly different.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And I can only imagine how the community would outcry if that actually had happened. Just became
Oh yeah.
3-tick. That would have been horrible.
It would have been horrible. So yeah, I'm really glad we changed our stance a little bit there. And that's how I feel with the dins as well. That's why I asked about the like its identity, right? Like, does it feel good where it's settled now? It has its own place, nothing's quite like it. It has its own style, and
Yeah.
that's what you think of when you hear dins.
I really love that it's 5-tick, by the way. It's weird because the identity of it is still kind of like that super slow 7-tick thing. Because I used to use it just to like aggro a bunch of bosses. Like I would do jellies and just bring the bulwark occasionally. And now that it's 5-tick, it's like, geez, I have like no time to like reset. Like it used to just be like spec and then like kind of chill out, get my mobs all like grouped up and stuff. I just felt like I had so much time with that 7-ticks. Now it's 5 and it's like, geez, it's like rushing me at this point. But
It is.
it's a good feeling though. Anything that's sped up feels good. If it's slowed down, it loses its identity. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
And that's why I kind of want an own identity for the harm stuff.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of has it with the 4-tick thing, but I don't know if that's powerful enough to be like, when you hear harm staff, what I think of is heavy damage.
Yeah.
But if there's a staff in the future that's heavier damage, then that's not really going to matter much anymore. And that's not going to be like its identity. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying every weapon has to have one either, by the way. But I think something as rare as that one
Yep.
ought to have one.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll be tough to see kind of like where it goes. It's just because like the Tome of Fire is the thing that's actually hard carrying it.
Yeah,
That's
true.
like the Tome of Fire is wonky. 50% extra damage. Like that.
That's insane.
That's like the biggest problem. That's
Winter
just
Todd is so broken in general. Like Tome of Fire, the XP rates, the crates, like what?
is weird.
The fact that the pet doesn't scale with 200 mil fire making, it's horrible, honestly.
Yeah. You should I know this is almost like an irrelevant topic, but back when the harm used to actually be really good, and it's the outlook of the harm was like it was going to be best in slot for a long time. I really was advocating for god pages to be able to be burnt at 99, or to be slightly toasted into burnt pages. You know.
I remember seeing a suggestion about that. I didn't know that was you.
I would still love that. God pages, I don't know if you know. You probably know, but like Zammy pages are 5K each.
It's so sad. They,
Like-
I remember when they were worth.
They were like
something.
2 mil. Some were 2 mil at one point.
Yeah.
You did clues
What
and like you got
happened?
pages and you're just like, oh. I remember back in 2015, I would grind mediums out. And if you got a Zammy page, you made bank that day. You're like, all right, like I'm chilling. I remember there was one time I got a Zammy and an Armadillo page. And I made like, I swear it was like 2.5 mil from that clue. And 2.5 mil was even more than it is worth now. So it was probably like worth like it was probably like 5 mil in current like value, I guess. But yeah, no, it's crazy. And so that's why I really wish you could burn those pages and just 1-to-1 ratio, turn them into burn pages. Because aren't burn pages, like, just price-wise, I hate making things dependent on, like, what their current price is, but, like, aren't burn pages around 4 or 5K each?
I don't remember.
I don't know. I just feel like that would be, like, the perfect thing. But again, it
I
doesn't
do
really
want
matter.
to see like more item syncs in general. I think we desperately need them.
Yeah. No, for real.
I think that's part of like, everyone needs that page once, but then after that, there's no point in keeping them.
Yeah.
You can sell them off or just drop them. They're kind of pointless. So, in general, more syncs would be great.
Yeah, so there's going to be a GE tax potentially. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I
Is
think
that-
it's
is
a
that-
good suggestion.
Is that coming
honestly.
out for sure? Because I remember hearing about it on like the little
I don't
Q&A thingy.
know. And
I guess it's just a suggestion currently.
Was it Bloy that's all? I think it was.
I just remember Mod
Or was it
Sween
just
was
on the
talking
live
about
stream?
it on that
Yeah.
huge live stream thing they were doing.
I honestly don't know if it's confirmed or not. I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think that's a great idea. I think that should have been the case a long time ago.
I think that would be really good, actually. I'm interested to see if it would be... because this is the whole, like, GE tax, but also that tax goes into a pool to then buy items out again and just delete the item, right?
Yep,
That
one.
was the idea.
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting to see if we can do that with, like, every item, or if that's something that is only done towards like very specific items. What kind of rules are determined around that?
Yeah, no, it would be tough to like draw the line of what's deemed something that needs a sync or not.
Exactly. Like, do we need a feather sync? Probably not. Do we need a bandless chestplate sync? Maybe, yeah. Probably. Do we need pages synced? Yeah, we do.
See, that would be
That's tricky.
cool, is like I don't know, like the new thing that's going to replace Bandos is if you need to sacrifice your current Bandos set, you have to like sacrifice it to the Bandos god or whatever, and then he gives you the power to infuse the new upgraded thing. Like that's kind of like a cool way to sync like items.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I totally understand like just having something be on its own without having to obtain something else as well.
I played a game that had a system like that, kind of, where every like spare item piece that you had, like armor or anything like that, would you could sacrifice it to your god to get kind of favor with that god, and then in return, that god could give you certain perks. Like eventually, you could buy gear, I think, but it would also give you like buffs or even like temporary buffs that would just, you would buy them with some favor, but then it would only last an hour, and then you'd have to get more
Yeah,
favor.
interesting.
Stuff like that.
That's
It's
a
kind of
cool.
like the buffs in Camp Dozel. You've done that at all?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I've never. Well, I haven't grinded that out yet. That's the
Fair.
below ice mountain thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet.
It has some permanent buffs, but then it also has like some temporary ones.
That's a cool leagues idea, by the way. Something where you just like I don't know, like these little 1 hour buffs or something. You just chuck like half your bank. You're like, do you want to just destroy all
Oh,
this
yeah.
stuff, and you get like an hour of like crazy buff or something. Okay.
It kind of reminded me initially about what we did with relics, and not relics, sorry, sigils in Deadman mode,
Yeah, that
where
stuff is
some of them had like
crazy.
temporary buffs.
Yeah. I honestly the whole moving like sigils or relics or whatever to DMM I think was a really cool thing. I feel like a lot of PKers loved that.
I think it was so exciting. It was. I didn't get to play it myself, sadly, but I think it was so interesting to watch
Yeah.
because it just completely changed everything, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely meta changing,
It
and
is
it was really cool to see like how good these people are at just adapting to new things.
literally. Yep.
They took it on really well, and just it looked like they'd been PKing with them for ages, even after just a few days.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to see.
It just sucks with Deadman mode because like even the players themselves understand like a week or two in there's just people that are just quitting because it's so demoralizing to lose all your stuff.
Oh yeah.
And that's just kind of like that's just how the game mode has to be though. It's super super
It
punishing.
is.
So
The question is like, can we do something to make it less punishing? I think we did make some changes to like say that you can keep your XP and stuff.
yeah. I didn't play it, so
It
I
should
don't
probably
know.
have been like that from the beginning.
Yeah. I'm too like uneducated on it. But I just remember I briefly popped into an Abyss stream and he was like, anybody that's not a content creator still playing Deadman mode right now is like it's just it blew his mind that like there was people actually just still playing for fun at that point because it was just like so many people had already lost the desire to play because they died or something. But if you weren't milking it for content, he just didn't understand. That's just kind of the nature of DMM, I guess, though. It's supposed to be temporary.
It is, yeah. And that's how we can get away with like giving insane buffs like that as well.
Okay.
I would love to see like some sort of PvP minigame in the main game that utilizes some of those sigils.
Yeah, I want. I know I keep saying. I know I'm like pressing you to move on. I'm not trying to. Just I keep saying okay, like moving on. But
Sorry.
no. That's a great point. I know there was something called like faction wars that they wanted to eventually kind of maybe pull in the future, or just kind of like bring up some dev blogs on it one day. But faction wars with relics as like a mini game would be so sick.
I love that idea, honestly. I think something we've discussed a bit back and forth internally, and just kind of, I don't think anything's set in stone in terms of like which sigils or would we even have sigils. But there's just so much potential there, and we've seen that it works.
Okay,
So
have
yeah.
you ever played Age of Empires?
I have. It's
So
great.
I'm thinking of like Age of Empires. You know how you upgrade your like civilization, like you go to like
Hmm.
go from, I don't even know what the beginning age is. Is it feudal age, or that's the second age? I don't even know what the ages were, but you go to like the castle age or whatever.
Yeah.
And you like move on.
Feudal
Like
isn't second age?
I literally can't remember
Feudal
what
age.
the things are called. I'm trying to think of what the last one was called. It's irrelevant, but imagine faction wars where you have that, where like your team, your faction is trying to upgrade, and as soon as you upgrade, you get an additional perk for PvP. And again, these, I don't know how long these tournaments would last, maybe 20 minutes or something, but like I think the part of the appeal of faction wars was like you have some people that are focused on the fighting part and some people that are focused on like upgrading your base. And the more upgrades
Yep.
you do, you can like prestige it, and then everyone gets like a new buff to do something. Like that would be so cool. And they're just
It would be
very
really
short
cool.
20-minute like faction wars. That's awesome.
And we could do it like multiple ways. Like we could have these like little 20 minutes ones. And then we could have like longer ones as well that last like a day or like a week, you know?
True.
And you kind of just rely on like a faction, I guess, to carry on while you're away. Um,
I wonder
and
how
hope that they still have the base when you come back.
Yeah, I wonder how that's going to work with like boosting. That's like the danger of this stuff. It's like
I don't remember how it was presented, but I think that in any sort of system like that, we would need 3 factions.
yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
the beauty of 3 and these kind of things is that if one faction is getting too powerful, then the 2 others can kind of gang together and defeat the third one
Yeah.
and just kind of all get on an even playing field again.
Yeah, but then it like the opposite happens where like two teams just destroy the other, and then like, or I mean, yeah, like I don't actually know what the objective of the game is to like to to win overall, like to have your faction as last or just don't lose first. I don't actually know what the objective is supposed to be, but
Uh,
I don't I
I
don't
don't
know.
know
I
if
don't
it's
know
been
honestly.
decided yet. Even it could be like different things. I guess could be hold all the points. I guess at the same time, if there's like different areas to control, you must control all of them or control all as many as possible within the given time.
One thing that would
Control most in that time. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One thing that would actually have to happen though is like I don't know if they could give out GP rewards. Like I don't know. I always get nervous with stuff like that. If it's not just purely cosmetic, people end up just finding the easiest way to boost it. Like that's
True.
what we saw with Soul Wars. It was just like nobody was actually playing. It's just like, okay,
And Bounty
I
Hunter.
just gotta get my pet as fast as possible, or I gotta get my crates as fast as possible. How
Yeah.
do I just abuse this?
Soul Wars boosting is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I've seen how it works. It's crazy.
Yeah. So like players find out how to abuse things. So there would have to be just like I don't know, one game going on at a time or something, or just like moderation going on. Like what
I
is
guess it depends on what you want from it, but you could have a buy-in so that like
yes.
all of the stuff is actually generated by players and nothing is
Yes.
generated by the game itself.
Yes, 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 yes. That's what it would need to be. Except then Iron Man can't participate. Can they?
True.
No, probably not.
Probably not.
Unless Iron Man could like only get the cosmetics, basically. Like they would still have to pay the fee to join, but then they'd who knows. Iron Man make this game more confusing. PvP makes the game more confusing for balance sake. Like, there's just so many things going on now. I can't even imagine what it's like to be a content dev and having to go through every single thing now that's in the game to make sure nothing's busted. There is so much to cater to.
Yeah, that's the difficulty, right? Like you have to imagine so many different things and keep so many different like builds in mind as well.
I know.
We
And then you got
recently talked about like Fasani's Nightmare, I think, and how like Some people have said that there are bots there. Well, what can we do to prevent them while the anti-cheating team are picking them up, right?
Yeah.
And one thing we typically do with these things is like add more restrictions to it. But then what do we add to Fasani's now in hindsight that wouldn't lock people or too many people out of that game or out of that boss rather?
Yep.
Because thematically it would make sense to have, you know, some sort of quest, maybe Sins of the Father, but then Pures can't do that, and so we'd essentially be locking them out of Fasani's, which would kind of suck because they
Yep.
used to be able to do that. So
Yeah,
these are always the kind of considerations that we have to think about.
That sounds, because like I always think like, oh, that'd be so cool if I was like a content dev or something, or just like I was just the idea maker and I didn't have to do any actual work. But then I was like, you have to, you can't just come out with something that you want. You gotta make sure it fits and balances with every single thing that's in the game now. And then you got one defense pures on Twitter just trying to get other things bad. Like I just find it so funny that people like limit themselves like big time, and then they're just like, please give us like less limitations. But at the same time, a lot of the time it makes sense. I know Shawnee was always begging for God D'Hide chaps to have like to be able to be worn by pures, which makes total sense. So I understand, and it eventually passed.
It does.
Okay, I want to hear like your opinion on like Infernal Cape selling and buying, and because I know like honestly I couldn't even like, I don't know for sure if Fire Cape buying and selling is even like, I guess like legal. I mean, I'm assuming it's legal because people have done it and stuff, but like the position that you guys made to say Infernal Capes cannot be bought or sold, or else you risk getting a ban. Like, what were your personal thoughts on that? And now, so like back in 2017 and then now as well.
No, for sure. And I think Yu-Gi-Oh on Twitter asked something similar, which was like, who's gonna ban cape buyers now that you're gone?
Oh yeah, I see that now.
So I answered that wrong really quickly because it's relevant. So I stopped banning them in like early 2019, maybe late 2018, something like that. Okay. Probably even before then. So it's always been the anti-cheating team. It's now like a formal part of their approach. So it's not just like a ad hoc, let's look at some cape buyers. Now it's like an actual work type queue with generated reports and that type of thing. So they are more on it. For your question, I think that's a great question. I support the stance of enforcing rules against buying and selling it because it undermines in-game accomplishment, an in-game challenge, and an item at the end of it. However, I understand why people buy and sell it. They buy it because it's hard, and they sell it because it's lucrative. And I think for me, I know it's a really simple answer, but if you look at cheating in any MMO, and there's a lot of it, look at World of Warcraft right now. People, if you're unfamiliar with like the kind of the WoW Classic community, especially, people, there's so much complaining. I don't mean that negatively. I think it's justified about the number of bots in game, and also the number of players selling boosts, which maybe could be comparable to like Infernal Cape selling, because you're essentially boosting someone to achievement. Yeah. So I still support the enforcement. I understand completely why people break the rules and try and buy and try and sell, and I don't even like have any disdain towards them. There's money to be made. People are going to do it. If it's not one person, it's the person B, person C.
Yeah.
Like everything, if there's money to be made, people will do it, and that applies to kind of non-game real world stuff too.
Yeah.
I feel like, and there is also, you know how easy it is to hide who you are on the internet now, like compared to way back in the day. Yep. How easy it is to boot up virtual machines and that both people can access, and it's just one consistent thing.
Yeah.
So I understand players of any game, not just old school, of any MMO and any online game. Destiny 2 has a big problem. I had a big problem with it. Still does, with people selling access to a title called Flawless, which is like a really prestigious. Basically, you have to dominate their like competitive PvP mode, and not everyone can do that. So people would recover accounts and play using that
Mm.
and then kind of giving back again. So that the kind of equivalent to selling achievements like Infernal Cape, it's across every game there is. And there is only so much a studio can do because of the way the internet. I know it sounds like such a cop out, but it's so easy to hide your internet and try and mask presence and stuff.
Yep.
And we'll work on new tools. Like new tools are coming as well to try and look at other different telltale signs beyond just kind of face value connection based things as well. It's an arms race, and I feel though the people, and this goes with any rule breaking. The people with the money to be made, they've got the biggest motivator to carry on iterating and carry on trying to work around.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I had Foe on the cast, and he was talking about, I guess we were both kind of talking about Infernal Cape buying and selling, and kind of like it almost seems like there are a lot of players that do just buy an Infernal Cape and never get caught.
Mhm.
And so that kind of precedent, I guess, of just like there are so many capes that are in the game that are bought, like it almost feels like there shouldn't, like, and we don't know how much time and resources is taken up from like the team trying to catch buyers and sellers and stuff, but I think Foe, and I don't really know how I feel about it because like I don't really care, I guess, too much. I'm not really too passionate about it, but I know Foe was just saying like if it can't be fully enforced, or if it can't be enforced enough, not like anything's going to be fully enforced ever, but like if it's not enforced enough, like it shouldn't even be enforced at all. And I thought it was kind of interesting.
That is an interesting perspective, and I I do get it for sure. But sometimes I feel like just even some enforcement is deterrent. It would be worse if there wasn't that.
Yeah.
And sometimes action taking now. So I mentioned earlier, right? Hopefully, getting new tools, new ways to kind of detect telltale signs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the way it approaches now is just almost a stepping stone to better enforcement down the line, but it's not ready to do that. So would you then say, all right, we don't have the most amazing tools right now, so for the next 4 months go nuts.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
but then nothing. You're not going to get past us.
It's just
so yeah.
I think the main argument, like, of course, cheating should always be like, and I guess cheating is arbitrary. You can kind of decide, like it's subjective, but there is clear cheating where it's like, okay, you're using a bot for something, like that's cheating. But when like buying a fire cape is legal, but buying an infernal cape isn't legal, I think that was kind of like more of the argument of just at what point do you stop? Because like if account sharing, if Jagex is kind of okay with account sharing, if it's not competing for high scores, that's fine. Then like what draws the line of anything? Can you get combat achievements done? Like, is that legal to do like certain combat achievements for somebody? So I feel like that was kind of like where the discussion was heading. Like, where do we draw the line of like what's legal or not? And I would love it if like all account sharing was banned, but like that's so hard. That's so hard to enforce, and on top of that, it's so pointless sometimes, where it's just like friends playing on each other's accounts for actual fun, not for any like gain or if they're competing or whatnot.
Yeah, no, it's I totally get the perspective, but I feel like sometimes there needs to be that like level of grey, like, so it can't always be black and white distinction. Sometimes you do just have to prioritize where resources is best spent. I think personally, resources best spent preserving the most acclaimed achievements, things like Infernal Cape, things like some of the higher end of combat achievements, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and let's say a player, and obviously, I am no longer representative of Jagex, so this is just all my opinion now. This is not me drawing in a tablet like these are the rules around account sharing.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that anymore, thank God. So this is if you've got like a limited number of resource, the Jagex, the Atlantic team have grown in size. I saw it as a question about like where's under budget, that type of thing. Maybe talk to that a bit later. But the anti-cheating team's grown in size, got better tools and stuff. I feel like they're really coming a long way, especially since I've been at Jagex and it was just Mod Weef and old school. But there's always going to be this is what we can do with all the resource we've got.
Yep.
And it's a case of, well, maybe something that's not very prestigious, we just let go. We reassess the position if it becomes a big problem or it's perceived as a really big problem. Otherwise, we focus where we focus and we use our time as best as possible.
Okay.
I know it's a bit like
Yeah, no, I think that's fair though, because there is resources that are used, and so what's the best allocation of time?
and I bet if I wasn't haven't been like working in games for the last 6 years, my opinion would be way different. I think I just now my instinct is just to think about it from what's best for the wider player base, also considering what that time could be spent doing elsewhere. Like, could that time be spent looking for bots instead? Could that time be spent trying to crack down on other aspects of real world trading, that type of thing?
Sween seemed to be one of the few JMods in touch with PvP and the wilderness. Can he talk about the struggles to get Jagex to prioritize these types of updates, and who will fill his shoes in advocating for that community?
That's a good question. It's always interesting to kind of I've been coined like one of the mods in touch with PvP, and I think it's just because I used to be a part of that community. And not necessarily, I wasn't the biggest wilderness-based PKer, but I was always big into like the organized warring scene, and so I understand motivations for wanting to do more of that. In recent years, or more recently, not recent years, but more recently, with some other mods on the team, and also like the return of Aiza and stuff. Not to put it all on him. Other people have been kind of like picked up the baton, so I've been able to kind of lend my support where it's needed, but they've been the ones more driving things along. What's really encouraging, and I'm not, this is not like a reveal because I'm no longer working at Jagex, but when I was in my last 2 weeks, I was involved in the kind of planning for the next bit of content, like next year's content and beyond. And it was obviously Mod Marcos is new to the team, a new executive producer. And he is so aware of the need to have content appeal to multiple types of players that I feel as though for the first time in a very long time, or maybe the first time ever, there is the infrastructure is there, the support is there, like the understanding that we need to appeal to multiple groups of players. Now, it's such a difficult one with PvP because it is a small portion of the players. However, they are arguably more invested than some types of players. So maybe they should get a little bit more. If maybe we don't just split development time and production time based on player cohort size. And obviously, the less support you give them, the smaller it will get because players will lapse out. Yeah. But they've never been a giant portion of the player base. But it has always seemed as though sometimes PvP updates were the first to get moved along and delayed and stuff. I'm quietly confident that with kind of Marcos joining and running the team, that's going to change. There are obviously, I think back to the biggest delays that I can remember with PvP based stuff. We announced change the bounty hunter twice, and it's like 2 years in a row at Ringfest.
Yeah,
and then it didn't appear for like another year after that.
Yeah,
that one sucked, and it was. I felt like really personally invested in that because I was on stage with Mod Archie announcing the first one. And here's the thing. We don't go on stage like, guys, you know it'd be funny if we tell players that something's coming and then we just don't do it. That'd be well funny. We all believed that we were going to be given enough time to work on our update. But then that wasn't. It wasn't. There was the bounty hunter updates for one of the first ones to be cut whenever cuts need to happen or priorities needed to change and stuff. And you know what, actually? Let me quickly bring up a little timeline. I've got a feeling that we were kind of empowered to work on the bounty hunter changes, the V2, which was ill-fated, but was the changes promised. I think that was the last time Mod Marcus joined the old school team, when Matt left and then Mod Marcus came in and he was like, okay, old school team, what are your biggest gripes? And we're like, well, we told players that we were going to change Bounty Hunter 2 years in a row, and then we weren't given the time to do it. And I'm pretty sure that was under his remit. He was like, well, go and he's very much what we promise players, go and do what we promise players.
Yeah, that's good.
The way I'd encourage people to look at it is, even if it's not content that you want to play yourself, put yourself in those shoes. Like,
Yeah.
surely you just want other people to enjoy the game that they like in their way.
Yeah.
And obviously not to the extent of like, I've seen some really great designs from players for PvP based stuff, and I've seen some pretty poor design for PvP based stuff. I do think there is an element to the what are people referring to now, like the kind of the prey system of the wilderness,
Yeah,
where
predator
you,
versus prey.
yeah. Now, I don't want that to be like it, but that has always been kind of intrinsic to RuneScape. Even early, even when people talk about the Gowers days, right? Green Dragons were only in the wilderness. KBD had to go into the wilderness.
Yep.
The Rune Rocks only in the wilderness. There was always something there. Now, I'm not espousing like you have to go into the wilderness. You have to go and be prey. And some of the designs I've seen from players, we might as well just put on a fucking Reddit thread, randomly teleport players into the wilderness once a day to go and get killed. Like, it's just like, some of the things are so nonsense. Like, what if you go and make players carry tons of gold just to do something with it, and then we can go and wear like 400k worth of gear and kill them? I don't like that.
Yeah.
But some players do enjoy like the thrill and the prospect of making some good money, knowing that they might die. And I think as long as you give them enough ways to counter, to escape if you're good enough,
Yes.
then I'm happy with it.
I have to say the new Rev update is so good, like, because you don't feel like it's all over when you get caught by a PK, or like it's not like, oh well, I'm dead. Like, that's what. And I'm not opposing to having part of the cave multi. I actually think that would be cool to have a multi section and a singles plus section. But man, when it was just multi, like, you had to pay the mob, or like whenever you see a player, like, you're just dead basically, and it just felt so unfair.
Here's the back when it was multi and clans were locking it down, I was always more in favor of redesigning rather than just removing multi itself, because if we could just add more ways to counterplay, so people didn't have to pay the mob, but still could if they wanted to. Because I played MMOs. I started playing RuneScape 2004. I mentioned I played a bit of Ultima when I was really young. Before then, and then I played a lot of kind of hardcore loot MMOs. I picked up Albion for a fair bit. I kind of dropped it. I picked up Eve for a fair bit. Dropped it during uni. I like the idea of the emergent gameplay of like groups and clans and people working around obstacles, player-made obstacles, or obstacles in game. But I think it was just a community effort. It was just bloody fierce when it came to, it became like the biggest problem in the world. Like, if you looked at Reddit most days, it was literally like, you could ask players, would you rather us remove Rev Caves, or remove multi, or cure cancer? They'd be like, Revs, motherfucker.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest though. Like, I actually really enjoyed that aspect. Like, I was there in the very early days once Rev weapons were released, and I spent 3 months straight. And like, I had just finished a semester of school, and so for my break for 6 weeks straight was just playing all day trying to get a Rev weapon. And I really, as stressful and like as sweaty as it was, I really was having a really fun time interacting with the community, trying to get protectors, trying to make a clan that's like, okay, we're gonna protect each other with, when a team comes, like, we're gonna do this and stuff. And it was, honestly, it was really fun. And I think there needs to be things like that, like
So I feel like obviously that was the kind of the early stages of it, and then it did get to the point of complete and utter lockdown, more like mob based. And by mob, I don't mean like in-game mob. I mean like the mafia type thing of organized, like organizations locking down purely for like malicious reasons.
Yeah.
I'm sure those clans will disagree with me, but real world trading did take a little knock because of the changes. So obviously, it was being farmed for those kind of purposes by some players. So I'm not. My preference would have been to rework to offer enough counterplay to the people there, so they didn't feel like they needed to pay.
Yeah.
But still, that's the easy way out if you do want to.
I also kind of wonder the the effect that Iron Man mode had on PKing and just wilderness updates in general, because I mean Iron Men are not benefited at all, and there's always like the argument like, oh, like like the beauty of the wilderness is if somebody attacks you, you can attack them back, like, but for an Iron Man there's just no incentive whatsoever.
What's the point?
Yeah, and on top of that, things aren't just GP value. It's like you're risking an item that takes potentially 100 hours to get, so if you accidentally skull, you're losing that, instead of it's just, oh, I'll just buy it with GP, so that's kind of I don't know, that is a big reason why wilderness, it's like hard to give it love, because like there's a huge chunk of the player base that gets no benefit from interacting with fighting back. And I know there was some changes being made. Like one thing that I know it's not that huge of a fix, but it's going to be really cool when I think it passed or I don't know if it was even pulled at all, but the wilderness changes that are happening. One of them was if an Iron Man kills you, then the items sit on the ground and like nobody can pick them up or something like that. Which is never a thing before, but now it's like, okay, if I actually fight back and kill you, you can't just run back and reclaim all your shit, which I think is a good change, but it's just hard being an Iron Man with wilderness.
Yeah, I feel like whilst you can't add benefit, because then
you can't
undermine Iron Man.
Yeah, you can't.
But if you can, incentivize some form of fighting back, even if it's just the satisfaction of making someone else lose their stuff, but also reducing the propensity to be tricked. Like I am a big advocate for removing like things like blatant skull tricking type things as well, because I know some people say it's just part of the game, it's the wilderness, but what I'm saying is people don't go into the wilderness because they could get tricked. Then why not just get rid of it and then they might go in? Like there were enough people in that survey, and I know some people guys might say, well, that they still won't go in, they were lying or whatever. But there were enough people in that survey saying just not knowing how certain mechanics works, or just the ability, like just knowing that they could get tricked in some way to lose their stuff. Well, like they almost felt like it was out of their hands.
Yeah,
was a big deterrent from going in anyway.
I completely agree with you, and I think that's going to be a really healthy update. The fact that now as an Iron Man, if there's a way that I cannot skull, like I just can't skull, that will incentivize me to actually anti-PK. Like I will bring claws in my inventory, whereas I would have never done that before, because there's a chance that I could accidentally skull and then lose all my items, and I'm risking way more than the PKers. But now I can, secretly bring bring claws on me that are like hidden, and then if they attack me, I'll pretend like I'm a noob and then do an anti-PK, claws into Gmaul randomly. And that's exciting with no risk, because you're not the one like starting the fight,
Look at games that only offer PvP. And this isn't just MMOs, this could be even something like Call of Duty. They're just based around people killing people.
Yep.
They don't have to worry about balancing. Just like, a cool fantasy RPG alongside trying to make an environment where people who want to kill people can do that too. And you look at MMOs who do offer it. With games like Albion and Eve, that is the gameplay. They do experiment with the kind of more PvE based stuff. But ultimately, if you go too far one way, I think Albion did this, they started adding some kind of like dungeon encounters and stuff where you can go and do some PvE for rewards. But then they're kind of the hardcore demographic where, they were noticing less PvP action being happened. So then, they've kind of pivoted back to open world, full loop PvP. And you kind of then run the, I think it's a great game, but you run the danger of locking yourself into one style of play, and it's only going to appeal to one type of player.
Yeah.
And that's not the biggest market of players too. I think it's really difficult to try and cater to everybody. And that's what I want to do. I want to make a cool game that everyone wants to play.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a right way to do it, but it's really difficult.
Yeah, for sure.